So going from one top team to another, you have the Boston Celtics. Now with the Celtics, they played the Denver Nuggets, and I went on. I did a reel, or I went live during the final 5 minutes of the game, and I was heated. I was really excited. It definitely felt like a playoff atmosphere type game, and I loved it. Of course, I was bummed, but thought, all right, well, hey, you're playing the defending champs. Obviously, you can't win them all. Your 20-game win streak was snapped. Well, when I went back and actually looked at how that game ended, because again, sometimes when I'm watching, right there live, like everything doesn't necessarily comprehend. It's not until I go back where I can see everything else, and it's like, oh, all right, that's what I missed. That's what I missed. But with this, they looked exactly like the playoff Celtics of last year. When they came out, they played well in the beginning. They were spreading the ball around. Porzingis going against Jokic Joker was great. That was a good matchup. Porzingis was scoring a lot of points. He was the dude in the first half. But then you pissed it away. When Jokic left the court and Jamal Murray's their lone guy, he schooled your ass. So, again, what are we doing? You had a very winnable game on the table. And I'm not just talking about because of Tatum's final shot. No. You had a very winnable game overall, and you pissed it away. The team went 1 of 9 for shooting in the final 5 minutes and a season low 39 points at the TD Garden after halftime. So the whole second half, they only put up 39, which is a season low at the TD Garden. What a joke. For a team that is too damn talented, too damn strong, you pissed away a winnable game. And Tatum and Brown, the superstars, disappeared. 100% disappeared. Tatum with 22 points and Brown with 13. And they phased out Porzingis. He had a strong first half, but they're like, nah, we got this. We're good. We're gonna move on. We're not gonna give Kristaps the ball anymore. And Kristaps is not gonna take any shots. In the final quarter, guess how many points Porzingis scored? Can you guess? 1. Of his 21 points in the whole game against Denver, he scored 1 point. That's right. And you can't do that. He needed more opportunities, especially due to the fact that they needed it. They absolutely needed him, and they either phased him out or as well as him just stopped shooting. He only took a handful of shots, and that 1 point came from a free throw. He had 1 made and 1 miss. Everything else, which was like 2 shots, 2 or 3 shots, he missed. Now, again, I mentioned him last week. Derek White, stud, racked up 24 points. But at the end of the game, it was all the Jays, which sucks sometimes. Again, kind of being Marcus Smart-esque. They're trying to take it on themselves rather than spread the ball out. Figure, hey, I'm sucking. Hey, Tatum's sucking. But wait, Derek White's having a hell of a game. Let's feed him the ball. Let's give him the matchups. They didn't do that. Tatum and Brown sucked. And getting to Tatum's final shot, you know how they say that, for the best players in crunch time, everything slows down for them? Not for Jason. Not at all. I think anybody with a brain who, saw that thought the exact same thing. They're thinking to themselves, what are you doing? He sped that up way too fast. They had 4.6 seconds, I think, left on the clock. He got the ball in the inbound, took 1 dribble, and then turned to his left and did a one leg fadeaway and you could just see everything was bad. You could tell, even as he's releasing the ball, this ball's not going in. No faith, no shot that he was going to hit that bucket. And the funny thing about that is he said it himself. He goes, quote, "I think I kind of rushed it." Yeah, you did, because I timed it. I was able to watch the clock as well as see at what point the ball left his fingertips. Between 4.6 seconds and 0. Can you tell me exactly at what point that ball left his fingertips? 3 full seconds. 3.0 was left on that clock when it all happened. And it was wild to me. I couldn't believe when I saw that. I'm looking at it going, dude, why did you release it that soon? What are you thinking? What is he thinking? The moment's too big for him. I can't believe I have to say that. Jason Tatum is the superstar player for Boston. He talks about being, sneakily one of the top 5 players in the world. And yet he crumbles. You give him the final shot and he crumbles. Now, I want to get to this stat real quick, but I thought this was unbelievable when it comes to game tying / game winning shots. Yeah, Jason Tatum per Tim Bontemps of ESPN, probably mispronounced that, but sorry. Jason Tatum is 3 for 13 on game tying or go ahead field goal attempts in the final 10 seconds of the fourth quarter or overtime in the past 2 seasons. Yeah. It feels like he just can't, he rushes things. He's sped up. He's all in his head. He doesn't understand really how much time 4.6 seconds actually is. If he could understand what is going on. Now, he also claims that he thought he was going to get fouled. Why? Like that. I thought that was just an idiotic comment because, why would they foul him in that moment? Because they lost 102 to 100. So what, you make him shoot 2 free throws? No, I'd rather risk it from that perspective. I'd rather risk exactly what Denver did than follow him and go through all of that. And, I'll even podcast with Barry on the Grid Network. So check it out if you haven't. Says sometimes I think there's a lack of trust between Tatum Brown versus the others. Absolutely, Barry. That's exactly what has gone on. And I think it all stems from, their time with Marcus Smart. I hate trying to put the blame solely on him because it's more than that. But the way that Smart kind of treated them and how I was saying for years that they needed to get out from underneath his shadow. And now that they have, it's still kind of living that moment. They believe they are the superstars, which they are, but they think they've already earned the honor rather than show up when they need to. What have they won? That's right. Nothing. They haven't won a title. And again, in Boston, in this city, Eastern Conference championships don't freaking matter. There are 17 banners at the top of the Garden that say otherwise. All right? Yes, some of them were dating back to the 60s and 70s and 80s. Most of them, actually. Let's see, 16 of them. But, you have to show it when it matters most. You have to prove it when it matters. Game 7 against Miami. Jason wasn't the same after he rolled his ankle. And I know it's hard. I think they ruled him a high ankle sprain, something like that. But, Jaylen Brown also sucked in Game 7. He was perfectly healthy. And, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's nice to see Derek White, come into his own, really be one of our key contributors. Kristaps Porzingis being a real key contributor, but they need to trust him. And that also could go back to Joe Mazzulla, who I thought Kendrick Perkins had a hell of a quote talking about Joe Mazzulla, saying, quote, they have two Joe Mazzullas. They have one that got the philosophy where you're going to get up more threes than you. When they hit him, he looks great. Then they have the other Joe Mazzulla who stands over there, and you wonder if you take his brain and put it in a bird, the bird is going to start flying backwards. You got that Joe Mazzulla. He goes on to say, you know why I say that? It's because he doesn't get the guys easy looks. Time and time again, we keep saying attack the paint. You have so many guys that are great at cutting. They cannot continue to play AAU style basketball all the time. You gotta have sets. End quote. And that is exactly the truth. Now, I don't believe it's all Joe Mazzulla, because Joe Mazzulla bought into what the nerds and analytics has sold him, which is get rid of the mid-range jumper. You either go to the basket or you shoot threes. There's a reason why the Celtics have always been one of the top three-point shooting teams in terms of field goals attempted in the NBA. It's because they live and die by the three. And if they're off, God, they're off. But when they're on, God, they're on. It's this dichotomy that just does not equal success. Especially when you have guys that, again, are very good from the three, but are liable to miss. If you had a guy like Steph Curry, who is Mr. Automatic, now, of course, he does miss. He does have his off games, but even his off games are Jaylen Brown's best games from three. Like, that's the crazy part, right? So that's why I sit here and I go, all right, this is why I can't stand nerds and can't stand nerds in sports. And I got nothing against these people, personally. I have everything against them philosophically and how they've changed two of my favorite sports, which is basketball and baseball. Baseball, they've murdered because now all these pitchers can only go, through the whole order twice. If they go through the order three times, they're like, oh, they're going to hit them. And there's so much wrong with it. And then in basketball, they've completely eliminated the mid-range jumper, which Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett built careers off of. And this is what you're doing. This is why you think this is better. What? Because you take a couple steps back and you shoot the ball, from there versus a couple steps forward, and you think that, oh, well, it's worth more. So why even bother going for the two? It's just, it's idiotic. It, to some degree, yeah, it makes logical sense because, let's see, 3 is greater than 2. Hey, I can do math. Yay! But it's ruined the game. It's ruined the game due to the fact that you have these teams now relying heavily on 3, and one of them being the Celtics. Jason Tatum can drive the paint. He should be able to score from anywhere, and he can. He absolutely can. But you're having these guys come down the court, and within, 5 seconds of your possession crossing center court, within 5 seconds, you're chucking up a 3. Explain to me how that makes sense. And like I said, Joe Mazzulla has bought into that fact. And this is one of the many reasons why I kind of agree with Perkins. I think it's a wild, analogy. Put his brain in a bird, and the bird's going to fly backwards instead of forwards. Crazy analogy. But Joe Mazzulla still has a lot to learn as a head coach. He's got a long, long, long way to go. And I'm one of these guys who I believe that the head coach in the NBA is relatively useless. But when it comes to games like these, this is where the coach matters. And I know I'm contradicting myself. You're saying that doesn't make sense, Tim. How can you say on one hand that the coach is relatively useless, but then when the game is close, that the coach matters? I don't disagree with you. I don't. But when it comes to certain things, Michael Malone schooled Joe Mazzulla in the Celtics from a coaching degree. Absolutely did. And that's why I totally believe that it's tough. It's difficult to sit here and say that, yes, I believe coaches don't matter, but then in certain scenarios and certain tight spots, they do matter. But I think it also comes down to the philosophy. And a lot of teams in the NBA have adopted the Joe Mazzulla, the nerd analytic philosophy of shoot as many threes and you'll make more threes than you miss, which or you make certain amount of threes, you're going to win the game. I still don't believe that works, but that's the new NBA now, and it's a shame. But I will say that game, as we saw the Celtics fall the way they have, as we saw the Celtics act like their old selves, I think at the end of the day, though, they were able to bounce back quick against Houston. In Houston, it was a perfect rebound game. Porzingis stepped up, has scored 32 points. And a sneaky note about Kristaps is he's having his most efficient year shooting this season, shooting 52% from the field. So, in other words, get Porzingis the ball. Like, hello, McFly, what are we doing? Yes, you got Tatum, you got Brown, you got White, you got Holiday, but you got a big man underneath who can maneuver and play. So I love the addition of Kristaps. He's been excellent for the Celtics, much needed, especially with how Robert Williams, Time Lord, talked a lot about last week. He's so much more than what Time Lord Robert Williams III could ever be in this offense. So I'm loving that. And then the Dallas game, it didn't look good. It didn't look good at certain points in that Dallas game, especially in the fourth. I mean, they lost the quarter by 2. They shot 1 from 8 from 3. They were outscored, out-rebounded, out-assisted, against Dallas. But I think one of the big things about that game, which I found to be more than just the numbers, was the fact that the Celtics looked fresh. The Celtics looked good. They, even though they were playing the second of a back-to-back, and Dallas had 5 days off due to the fact that their game against Golden State got postponed because of the death of a Golden State assistant coach, which thoughts and prayers to him and his family. It's a tragedy, and I am very sorry to hear that. But Dallas had 5 days off and just didn't look 100%. Now, Luka and Kyrie, excellent players. No two ways about it. But I was glad to see the Celtics rebound. Both Jays were in the 30s, I think, if I remember correctly. Tatum at 35, Brown at 33 points. So great game by both. And I'm glad to see that they can pick it up, that they can rebound that quickly off a bad performance like they had on Friday against Denver. So Celtics, you know what? I think we're good for now. I don't think there's really, time for panic, because when push comes to shove, they still have a few more games that, I really have circled on the calendar that I want to see how they are able to perform. Are they going to look like they did in the final half against Denver, or are they going to look like they did against Houston and Dallas? So that's kind of there are a few more games left this season. And again, we haven't even reached the trade deadline. We haven't even reached the All-Star break for the NBA. So there's plenty of time for that.